This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Waterville City Council. There are agenda packets available in the file pockets near the entrance or online at the City of Waterville's website. All items appearing in consent agenda are voted on in one motion and vote. Generally, these items are routine in nature and do not require discussion. All items listed under unfinished business or new business are voted on separately. First, councilors will be given an opportunity for questions or comments. Once all councilors have had an opportunity to speak, citizens will be given an opportunity for comments or questions. Citizens must speak at the podium and identify themselves. Each citizen will be allowed one opportunity to speak and will be limited to 3 minutes. Finally, councilors will be given another opportunity to speak or comment. Citizens who would like to speak on a topic that does not appear on tonight's agenda will have an opportunity to do so at the end of the meeting under the public comments section of the agenda. Pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Disclosure of conflict of interest. Anybody got a conflict? Claude, go ahead.
I believe there is an item on the agenda that the mayor has a conflict, is there not?
He doesn't vote, though.
I don't vote.
But you shouldn't discuss it.
I won't. I don't vote. Done deal. We good with that, Claude? I can't hear him.
Procedure would, of course, call for you to step away from the
I won't discuss it.
to step away from the mayor's podium and be an ordinary citizen during that discussion.
Done deal. I got a seat right here for you, Claude. I'll be right there. You can watch me. Anything else? All right. Moving on to city manager.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everyone. I'm happy to be here tonight and good to see everyone. I have just a few things to report on tonight. First of all, I want to thank Chief Massey, Public Works Director Matt Skane, and Councilor Green for their effort in bringing about a four-way stop at Western Avenue, Chase Avenue, and First Rangeway. It's going to be a big safety improvement. There was a lot of work that went into that, a lot of coordination with Maine DOT, and it's a situation that needed correcting, and it's been done. So thank you, everybody. They're also looking at a crosswalk on Chase Avenue farther up on the westerly side of it to see what improvements can be made there and make the crosswalk a safer place to cross that street. The police department, and I mentioned this at the last meeting, and I provided you with a more detailed report in the shared space. The police department has been working with the South End Neighborhood Association, and among the improvements or strategies that they've applied in dealing with some of the issues that were brought up to them, with respect to traffic safety concerns, they're addressing that with special traffic details. The details of all of this is in the report that's been given to you. They're also working on vandalism by increasing patrols in the known problematic areas and working with the residents to identify where those locations are and who might be doing the vandalizing. We're dealing with neglected properties in the neighborhood through the Code Enforcement Department and the Police Department. They're working with residents, landlords, and South End businesses to apply the building and fire codes appropriately and create safer conditions in the neighborhood. And finally, they're working on the possession and sale of illegal drugs by creating a special drug team to investigate the possession and sale of the drugs in the South End. Chief Massey, thank you very much for doing that. It's a pretty heavy lift, and I think that in the South End it's going to be welcome, and we all hope that it's going to be very successful. I also have a few things to report from Public Works and Parks and Recreation tonight. First of all, the intersections at King Street and Summer Street along Gold Street in the South End are 90% complete in the work that the Public Works Department has been doing. What they've been doing is adding new curbing, new sidewalks, and narrowing the intersections so that they're better defined and safer. They're putting in crosswalk markings and better positioning the stop signs so that they're closer to the actual intersection instead of set far back the way they were before. That should be a substantial safety improvement at both of those intersections. On the paving side of the work that Public Works is doing, they are nearly complete with paving on the following streets: Eastern Avenue, Oakland Place, and Marston Road. They've been working on those for a good portion of the summer with Pike Industries, the paving contractor we have, and the work is nearing its completion. Last week, we held a neighborhood meeting at the Pine Ridge Recreation Area. Several people showed up from the neighborhood. We showed them what we were proposing to do. We had a large graphic there and answered all the questions that they had. The feedback that we got was very positive. A number of them said that they wished that this had happened when their children were young to provide a better place for them to be playing. And they were particularly interested in and welcoming the idea of locating the parking lot on the golf course side of the property with access directly off West River Road. So it was a good meeting, and as meetings this time of year end, it ended in the dark. And then finally, a few announcements out of Public Works. The winter parking ban begins on December 1. Everybody needs to be aware of that. The Quarry Road Trails passes are available for purchase at City Hall and at the Quarry Road Trails Welcome Center. And then finally, the curbside leaf collection began yesterday and will continue through Friday, December 3rd. Thank you for your time.
Good.
Mr. Daly, could you talk about the meeting that you and I and Councilor Frankie and the engineer had about the 97 days?
I'm glad you brought that up. I'd
That was
be happy.
pretty sharp with you last meeting, and I want to make sure that we get the point of clarification on that.
Yeah, let's close that loop.
Yep.
First, on the 97 days that the project is reported to be behind schedule, in talking with our city engineer, who's our overseer on the project, we learned that there are some elements of the project that are, in fact, 97 days late or overdue on the schedule. Those are going to be postponed for work next summer or next spring and summer. Probably the most notable one in that list is the resurfacing of Front Street. That was supposed to have happened this summer, but one of the problems that occurred was that they encountered substantial underground utilities that they weren't aware of. They hadn't been marked, they weren't on the plans, and when they discovered them, they had to bring in CMP and other utility companies to clear the way. So that's behind schedule. You've seen, though, that the signalized intersection at the end of Temple Street and Front Street is all set up at this point. They're doing the finishing work on that. The other thing that was happening had to do with, I don't remember.
The green space between the curb and the actual sidewalk.
Oh, right. The curb is laid along the street according to the slope of the road, and the lateral slope of the road, meaning from north to south down Main Street, dictates how the curb line goes. The sidewalk, however, has a different contour to it. So as you move along the sidewalk, it appears that the curb is undulating, but it's not the curb that's undulating so much as it is the sidewalk. And they're going to have to put in a variety of slopes between the edge of the sidewalk and the back edge of the curb in order to compensate for that. It sounds kind of strange at this point, but I think it's going to come out just fine because they're going to be using granite pavers to do that work, and it's going to be aesthetically pleasing, and the engineer tells us that the slopes aren't going to exceed the allowable safe slopes according to highway standards. What did I miss?
That was about it. We're just talking, the 97 days is more of the pretty of it, but the passable traffic down Main Street is at the 23-day mark, so it wasn't as bad as,
No.
you know, there was some clarification there that needed to happen, and we got our answers and then some, so.
Yeah, it seems that somebody grabbed the 97 days and said, that's it.
Right.
Everything's 97
Yep.
days behind. Not the case. The other thing that we did look at, though, is the width of the street, and we agreed to schedule a meeting with the Maine DOT engineer who's managing the project to talk over with that person how we can manage the traffic on the street, deliveries in particular, when it's completed. The width of the street is 11.5-foot travel lanes and 8.5-foot parking spaces on both sides. It's narrow, but it's certainly passable.
It will do, if anything, it'll slow down traffic coming down Main Street. It won't be a drag strip.
It'll be a positive outcome, I'm sure.
Did you also have a chance to talk to DOT about the intersection that you and I had talked about with Pine Ridge versus the junior high?
Matt may have done that at this point. Matt Skane, the Public Works Director, but I haven't had that conversation.
Okay.
I know that Maine DOT wants to do a traffic study out
Right.
there with respect to a second access that the school department is looking for from the junior high school that could very well line up with the access road into parking
Right.
for Pine Ridge.
Right.
And if that's the case, we probably going to end up with a four-way intersection there.
Okay. Thank you.
Did you want to say anything, or you're all set?
I'm good.
Okay. Council committees.
Clyde and Rebecca have their hands up.
Counselor Green and then Counselor Frankie.
We can't hear you.
You're on mute.
I was just waiting for Counselor Frankie. He had his hand up.
Okay, Counselor Frankie.
Just very quickly, Steve, on the Main Street sidewalks, it's almost December. It doesn't look to me like they're going to have time to get all the pavers in that space between the road and between the curb and the sidewalk. What's the plan to keep that from being a very dangerous situation?
I'm glad you brought that up because the engineer told us that that indeed is the case and that they'll be putting hot top in between the curb and the sidewalks for this winter, and then they'll just dig that out in the spring and put the permanent paving blocks in there.
Oh, that's great. Us guys with old legs, we're not ready for those kind of ledges.
No.
I also would like to commend the police department for the work they did down in the south end that you reported on, and would suggest that other neighborhoods in the town take note that the South End Neighborhood Association, by giving voice to the concerns of the citizens in their neighborhood, have done a very remarkable job of getting the attention of the city to get things done for their neighborhood. I would suggest that the other neighborhoods that you might get out and get with your neighbors and form your own neighborhood association. Thank you.
Anyone else? Before we move to the agenda. All right, can I get approval of consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Patty, can I go roll call?
Counsel Morris,
Yes.
Counsel DeBrito,
Yes.
Counsel Klepak,
Yes.
Counsel Green,
Yes.
Counsel Foss,
Yes.
Counsel Frankie,
There are a couple of typos, Patty. I don't want to go into them, so I'm going to vote yes to approve the agenda, but I assume that you'll get the minutes straightened out.
thank you, will do.
I'll say yes.
Counsel Thomas,
Yes.
the vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Okay, moving on to unfinished business. Order 219, 2021.
I'll make a motion to take the entire agenda by title only.
Second.
Roll call.
Counsel Morris,
Yes.
Counsel DeBrito,
Yes.
Counsel Klepak,
Yes.
Counsel Green,
Yes.
Counsel Foss.
Yes.
Counsel Frankie,
Yes.
Counsel Thomas,
Yes.
the vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Okay, order 219, 2021.
Before we start in, Jay, I'd like to raise a issue from the end of the minutes from our last meeting.
Go ahead, Claude.
In which you responded to a question by Rian Finch about whether whether the council was going to put together a committee to start working on a comprehensive plan. And you promised that it would be on the agenda this week. I just wondered what had gotten in the way of that.
The length of the agenda.
Apparently the length of the agenda. No, not my doing. That's a much broader conversation that you and I should have.
Oh, but we are going to move forward with the
Absolutely, you will see that
comprehensive
on the next agenda. It should have been on this one,
Okay, thank you.
because we have to approve it so that people can apply. Order 219, 2021.
An order providing for authorization to accept and spend grant funds.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion? Nope. All right, seeing none, Patty, can I get a roll call?
Counsel Morris,
Yes.
Counsel DeBrito,
Yes.
Counsel Klepak,
Yes.
Counsel Green,
Yes.
Counsel Foss.
Yes.
Counsel Frankie,
Yes.
Counsel Thomas.
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Order 227, 2021.
An order providing for the issuance of general obligation bonds in the amount of $5,287,400 for capital projects.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion?
Claude.
Claude, go ahead.
I just wondered, I meant to ask this at the last meeting, but what is the service on this bond that we're going to have to deal with in next year's budget and the year after that?
Steve,
What is the what?
what is the estimated bond
service.
payment for the first and second year?
First and second years are $597 in the first year, $589 in the second year. It's higher than we had planned on, but the effect of that is that future bonds, maybe one or two, are going to have to be less than $3 million to stay with our plan, that 30-year plan that we talked about during the budget process.
And that begs the question why we shouldn't put off the recreation bond until next year when we have a better idea of what our finances are going to look like. So I'll again offer that as an amendment to the bond issue that we postpone until next year, the recreation bond.
I'll second that.
Patty, can I get a roll call on that amendment?
Counsel Morris,
No.
Counsel DeBrito,
No.
Counsel Klepak,
No.
Counsel Green,
No.
Counsel Foss,
Yes.
Counsel Frankie,
Yes,
Counsel Thomas.
No.
The vote is 2 in favor and 5 opposed.
No. 5 in favor, 2 opposed.
No.
2 in favor,
He
5
amended.
opposed.
Oh, that just messed me all up. You guys went backwards.
It was the opposite.
It was. I was like, wait a minute. It didn't sound right. All right. So no amendment. Anybody else have anything else on this? Patty can get a roll call.
Somebody from the public has their hand up.
You got a-
Richard Brannigan?
I believe he's our,
He's our bond guy.
he's our bond guy.
Let him in. Where is he? Hello, Richard.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Thank you. What, was there a question for me?
No, you had your hand up.
Well, when I heard that the city manager was announcing the bond payments for the next two years, I was just gonna chime in case he didn't have those.
Okay, thank you. He's got them. All right. So now can we get to a roll call?
Counsel Morris,
Yes.
Counsel DeBrito,
Yes.
Counsel Klepak,
Yes.
Counsel Green,
Yes.
Counsel Foss.
Nope.
Counsel Frankie,
yes, because we need the roads.
Counsel Thomas.
Yes.
The vote is 6 in favor and 1 opposed.
Ordinance 229, 2021.
An ordinance providing for amendment to ethics ordinance.
I'd like to table 229, 230, and 231 until the December 8th, I believe is when we need to have, is the next meeting.
Second.
Patty, can I get a roll call on that?
Counsel Morris,
Yes.
Counsel DeBrito,
Yes.
Counsel Klepak,
Yes.
Counsel Green,
Yes.
Counsel Foss.
Yes.
Counsel Frankie,
Yes,
Counsel Thomas.
Yes.
Vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
New business. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Steve, do we have anything on
I
the
didn't hear-
website? Do we have anything on the website about these amendments?
They are on the last agenda packet from the last meeting.
They're on the
At
last
very-
agenda
at the-
packet.
At the very least, they're on the last agenda meetings packet. Yep.
That is correct. There were a few more amendments being proposed by the city solicitor that haven't been approved by the ethics committee yet. I'm working to get that group together to be able to finalize those recommendations.
And that's the reason that we keep pushing this
Right.
down the road, so.
Okay. New business, Resolution 237, 2021.
A resolution providing for accepting the result of the recount of the Ward 7 City Council race.
Move to adopt?
Second.
Any discussion? Patty, can I get a roll call?
Counsel Morris,
Yes.
Counsel DeBrito,
Yes.
Counsel Klepak,
Yes.
Counsel Green,
Yes.
Counsel Foss.
Yes.
Counsel Frankie,
yes,
Counsel Thomas.
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
All right. Resolution 238, 2021.
A resolution providing for canine program adoption.
Move to adopt?
Second.
Chief? I don't think
They
that's
can't
working,
hear you.
Chief.
Hold
I'm
on.
sorry.
Hold on, Chief.
Chief's mic isn't working.
Is it on?
Claude, can you guys hear us on the Zoom call? Or hear Chief?
no,
Not yet.
Okay.
Oh, there it goes.
Okay.
Yep.
Again,
All
good
good.
evening.
Tonight, we'd like to provide a short slide presentation on a proposed K-9 unit for the police department. Back in the early 90s, we had a K-9 program, and eventually, after a couple of years, we lost that program. But we think now is the right time to bring that program back. Considering an uptick in crime and other issues that we've seen happen around the country, we think a K-9 program would be a very valuable tool to assist us out there during day-to-day patrols and on other functions that we have to deal with. Last fall, I had asked Sergeant Kyle Mcdonald, who's standing on the side of me, or actually he had come to me and asked if he could do some research on a K-9 unit. He has a background in that. He's worked with other agencies that have K-9 units, so I told him to go ahead and do that. So he put in a tremendous amount of work on this slide presentation that you'll see of why we think we need this K-9 unit for the Waterville Police Department. As it stands right now, every time that we need a K-9, we have to call another agency. And of course, there's time delays, sometimes they're not available, and many, many times we're just not able to get a K-9 to assist us in really some of our crucial calls that we go on. So I don't want to go into too much detail because I think the slide presentation will show that, but I think everyone's aware that there are a number of agencies that have K-9s out there, and according to the Police Dog Foundation, there are approximately 50,000 dogs that are in service right now assisting local, state, and federal agencies. So they're a valuable tool. They're very, beneficial to the police department in a number of areas to support all of our operations within the police department. So at this time, I'd like Sergeant Mcdonald to go ahead and go through the slide program for you. That'll give you greater detail why we think this is going to be such a great tool for us.
Good evening, everybody. Appreciate having us here. Appreciate your time. I'll make it short. Really excited to be here. Like the chief said, this is many years in the making of even getting in this room with you guys today. A little bit about myself. Kyle McDonald. Was born here in Waterville. Been with the police department for 11 years now. I'm a nighttime supervisor. I deal with a lot of different K-9 calls, being the night shift supervisor that we have to call. And we currently utilize state police and the Kennebec County Sheriffs. And there's, they're great, and it's just be certainly better to have our own here and share a couple of things with you. So I kind of made it, why do we need a K-9 program here? Our mission statement at the police department, of course, is to promote and enhance the quality of life throughout the city. So I think it would be an added tool for our police officers to assist our department in enhancing the quality of life throughout the city, making the community a safer place for everyone to live, work, attend school, and to recreate here in the all the areas that we have here. So what can a K-9 do for us? So what they can do for us is they can conduct scent tracks for children who are reported missing from their homes or schools. So what a K-9 does there is they pick up a human scent in the air and they track them. They can so if a child goes missing from the home, the dog can do a little casting in that area. If they pick up that child's scent, they attract to that. And I've been on successful tracks here in the city where people have gone missing and the K-9 has found them very quickly. That's obviously a great thing. I think most people, have children here in the community. Certainly there's many schools in the community, and if somebody was to go missing or run away from school, it's certainly an added benefit for our department to be able to find them faster. We can conduct scent tracks for elderly individuals who become confused or disoriented and walk away from the residences or long-term facilities or hospitals. We have a lot of long-term facilities here. We have one in particular. We have the Woodlands on the West River Road. We have many other great establishments here in the city that do have an elderly population, and a lot of those people have dementia, and I have responded to calls where they've gone missing. And we had recently, this summer, we had a K-9 track of a elderly female with dementia that we found her very quickly with the dog. So it was a great outcome, and without that dog, we might not have found her. I'm not sure. It's one of those things that we're not sure about. We do have many people that we have a, excuse me. We have a Wanders database for special needs children and adults that the police department utilizes. And what that is if, say, for like autism, for example, if parents call up and say, hey, my children has autism, they have a tendency to wander, we'll have a Wanders database with their information, their photo. But it's another added track that a canine could pick up their scent and try to track them and find them a lot quicker. So a lot of tools like that. And then, of course, people suffering from mental health who are reported missing. We deal with that almost on the daily, where people struggle with mental health and they leave their house. We have some community programs here in the city, houses for mental health as well, and people do leave, and we deal with that on the daily basis. And many times as a nighttime supervisor, I'm kind of like in between here. Do I call a canine? Do we look for them on foot? If we had that canine, it would be obvious. Let the dog track. That's their job. And again, what else can a canine do for us? They can search vehicles and homes for drugs. How they do that is if we're on a traffic stop and we think this person is a drug trafficker in the city, and what the dog will do for us is they can actually do, by constitutional law, they can do a sniff of the vehicle. And if the dog will give an indicator to the handler, and usually that's just simply sitting down. If that's picked up, we can actually search the vehicle and hopefully find the drugs if they do indeed have the drugs. Homes, I put this down because when we utilize execute search warrants in our city, a real danger is entering these people's homes, and who knows what they have on the other side waiting for us, guns, knives. A lot of times a dog can go first, and they can go in there with us, not only for our protection, but also for searching for the drugs during those search warrants. Searching buildings for hidden suspects. A lot of times somebody will call us up and say, hey, I think somebody's in my house. And we have to go into their house and search. A canine would certainly be utilized for that. And then also even more important here is we have businesses that alarms go off, and we have to go, and there's a lot of huge businesses here that we have to go and search, just a couple officers sometimes, and search this whole thing room by room. That dog would be that added protection for us, officer safety issue, going in and looking for the suspects. And then assist in the apprehension of fleeing suspects. We get a robbery call at a bank, and we always have to call. Number one thing that I do on the way to the call, I ask dispatch to try to search for a canine. So if we have one there, obviously that will utilize them. A lot of different robberies of convenience stores, people maybe will get robbed, burglaries, if somebody breaks into somebody's house and then flees, we can get a scent track from wherever they flee. So if you guys call us and say, yep, they just left our back door, that's where the canine's going to start, and hopefully we'll pick up that scent and track to wherever they are. So that's all like the criminal aspects of and importance of a canine. This is more community-based here. It can be utilized in schools for demonstrations. So I remember as a kid, we had it was a state police officer and a sheriff's department deputy. They'd come in with their dogs and put on a great little show where they would have somebody running away from the dog and a little chase or something like that. And it always kind of stuck in my head as a great thing for a young person to see that and interact with the police and get that, behind the badge type feeling. And most kids like dogs. Be utilized in community outreach programs, so it's the South End Night Out. And then it could be really any other program that the city has. They could call us and say, hey, we'd love to have your dog there and, greet people and such as that. And then just simply deterring crime in our community. I've worked nights for a majority of my career. If the drug traffickers in our city, this stuff is passed around that, oh, geez, Waterville Police Department has a canine now. That in itself is going to be a deterrent for some of the drug traffickers because they're going to say, well, we're going to have to figure out they're going to try to figure out a different way to get past that. And alone, that's going to deter some of the drug traffickers. Just having a car, patrolling our streets that say canine on it, it's a great deterrent. So I went right there. I kind of branched it as what can they do and what are the benefits. So the benefits are increased officer safety, increases the chance of locating missing and endangered people. Every minute that, Every minute that we have to wait for a canine, when a child goes missing, an elderly individual, dementia goes missing, is maybe that break point between we find them and we don't find them. And there's been a lot of moments I'll be at night and I have to call in, and if nobody's working at the KSO that has a dog on, or the state police that has a dog on, they have to wake somebody up. So the procedure is, if I determine a canine's got to go to a call, say a missing child, I'll have to have dispatch call their dispatch. Their dispatch in turn calls their supervisor on duty for the state police, for instance. State police says, nope, we don't have anybody on. What do you have for a call? We have a missing child. Absolutely, we'll wake somebody up. If it's in the middle of the night like I work, they have to call this person. This person has to get up, put the uniform on, leave their house. Who knows where they live? Could be 20, 30 minutes, hour away. And that's when we get our dog. Usually we're holding perimeter, because it's really important to hold perimeter, because if we say it's out in the woods, if we start walking in the woods, we're going to mess up that scent track for the canine, because when the canine can't distinguish between me and you or me and you, scent-wise, it just picks up human scent. So if we were just to walk into the woods and looking for the child, we're going to mess up that scent track. So every minute you wait is that minute between maybe finding them or not. So, and then increases the rate of apprehension of criminals in our community. Same thing. Somebody goes, robs the Big Apple, and then they take off on foot. We're going to secure a perimeter, wait for a canine every minute. Might be that minute that they're gone somewhere else and we can't find them. Increases our detection and seizure of drugs and contraband from source-level dealers. What I mean by source-level dealers are the ones that are bringing the drugs in from maybe out of state, ones that are setting up in our and taking advantage of usually users in our community. They get addicted to drugs. Somebody moves in and says, hey, can I stay at your house and sell drugs out of your house? Yep, sure, for a little bit of drugs on the side. Those are our source-level dealers. Those are the ones that we're really going after. And it certainly increases our detection, because if we stop a car, there's a lot of times as a nighttime supervisor, my guys will call me and say, hey, I know this guy's got drugs in his car based on his history. He's a known drug trafficker. I have intel from confidential informant, and it's just not enough. If we had that dog that we could run him around the car and do a air sniff of the car, they hit on the car, we could search and maybe get drugs off the street. And I've seen that as well. I've called canines. They have indicated on cars, and we've got a lot of drugs. It goes the same for houses as well. The ability to diffuse a potentially violent encounter by the mere presence of a canine. We're encountered every day with the decision to use force or not in certain circumstances. If a canine is with, say the canine is with his handler, and somebody is thinking about possibly fighting or fleeing, just by the mere canine on the side of the vehicle and the barking in the car, that really changes people's idea of whether they want to run or they want to fight the handler. It's really a big one. I've been on a call once where somebody was hiding up in the ceiling like this, and we got a canine there, and just the barking, that guy said, oh, I'm done, and it comes right down, and we were able to safely apprehend him, which is the most important thing. And liability, I think that would certainly help us as well, as so we don't have to put our hands on people that maybe we wouldn't have to. And like I've said, it'll act as a department ambassador to strengthen our relationship between our community and the department. That's by deterring crime, solving crime, and also like when the schools want us to come in and do demonstrations or community outreach programs. It certainly increases the professional image of the police department, which could certainly lead to higher morale in the department. It offers a specialty or career track to interested officers. So I know that at times, especially in these days, all departments, these days sometimes are having a hard time keeping officers. Certainly a young officer gets a canine. It's usually a 6 to 8 year lifespan on working canine. They're probably not going to be leaving because they have that dog, and it's really a sought-after position for a young patrol officer. And it's a great recruitment and retention tool for the police department. A lot of times when I hear young officers say, I'm going to go to state police or I'm going to go to another larger agency, a lot of it's for different specialties. And this would add one to our department and hopefully keep officers in our community. And that's what I had right there. Anybody have any questions?
I have one for Chief. Startup costs and then year-over-year costs. Do you have estimates on that yet?
Yes, the startup cost would be approximately $16,000.
Okay.
There is a foundation grant, the Frank Stanton Foundation grant, that specializes in funding canine programs. It's a non-competitive grant. We found that most agencies that apply for it receive the grant, and that's what we would do.
Does that take care of the canine as well as outfitting the cruiser?
Yes.
Okay. And then year-over-year?
In what?
Year-over-year costs?
The initial grant would pay for the first 2 years and some of the third year. After that, to maintain the program, it would be approximately $10,000 a year. And there's always an opportunity to go back and see if we can get more grants from that foundation.
Yeah, I just didn't see any numbers in here, so I wanted to make sure we were aware of those numbers, so
Right.
thank
So
you.
the first 2 years would be completely paid for.
Yep,
Everything.
awesome.
Anybody else? Counselor Green?
Yeah, thanks. I'm just interested in what are the costs for, and is there one officer assigned to work with the dog, or are several people trained to take the dog out on calls?
The dog would be assigned to one officer. For the duration or the lifespan, the working lifespan of that dog would be assigned to one officer. You can't pass the dog along or have multiple officers that handle the dog.
Okay.
Any other questions? Oh, go
So,
ahead.
so the cost is just for the maintenance of the dog?
No,
And-
sorry. The cost for the first year, the startup cost, and some of that is one-time cost, is $16,000. That will be provided by a grant from the Frank Stanton Foundation. And that will actually pay for the program for 2 years and possibly part of the third year. And that pays for everything. It buys the dog, it does the training, it outfits the car.
Okay. Yeah.
Ma'am? I'd have,
It seems to me that you're demanding a lot of that dog. Why just one dog to do all that checking in and putting his life up on the line?
Well, it's also based on our staffing. And obviously the cost of doing 2 dogs. So we think to start with, we'd like to start with 1 dog, and then we can always look at adding another dog at some point down the road.
Plus, it's supplemented by the state police and the sheriff's office, whatever resources they have
Yes.
as well.
anyone else? Oh, Elizabeth.
I just wanted to say that, I can see by the costs that it's obviously less expensive to bring a dog in than to hire social service workers and so on, but in terms of perspective, I much prefer the perspective of doing more to build the community in other ways, and I would add that for anybody who's ever seen documentaries like Eyes on the Prize or other ones, where you see dogs being used in very terrifying ways, with people, it's not necessarily something that everybody's gonna think, oh, how nice the police have a dog. A lot of people are terrified of dogs, and they've been used in very violent ways against civilians, so I continue to keep that on the table as well.
Anyone else? Chief, thanks, and like I said, we'll get Rick to dog sit.
I said I'm not putting a suit on.
Yeah. Any other questions before we go to vote? Patty, can I get a roll call? Oh, wait, Counselor Green.
This is just a request. We can't hear people who are speaking in the room here in Zoom land. So if you could ask people to go to the mic so we can hear what they're saying.
Will do.
Yeah, thanks. Okay.
Chief and Sergeant are kind of intimidating up there. Nobody wanted to go up to the podium.
That's why I got him in the stands.
All right, Patty, can I get a roll call?
Counsel Morris,
Yes.
Counselor DeBrito,
Yes.
Counselor Klepak,
Yes.
Counselor Green,
Yes.
Counselor Foss.
Yes.
Counselor Frankie,
Yes.
Counselor Thomas.
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
All right. Moving on to Resolution 239, 2021.
A resolution providing for refer to planning board, allow stadium lighting at Drummond Field.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion? Rick?
Mayor, you and I had talked a couple of weeks ago, or a little, maybe more. Is the, refresh my memory, boosters are possibly going to throw in
So-
some help to help fund some of the funding? I'm not looking for full funding, I'm saying.
No, actually, it's going to
Yeah.
be full funding.
Is it going to be
So-
full funding?
So the Waterville football boosters at the high school, there's been talk about these stadium lights for years, and every year we have to go try to hunt down lights and for a one-night game. And I know 25 years ago, they looked at putting the lights there, and there was some objection. So it's been 25 years. It's time to start having that discussion again. So I think the first start is to send it to the planning board to see if we can even put the lights there. And then once that's done, the boosters will go to the school to see if the school wants them. And then if they do and the school approves, then they will start fundraising to pay for those lights. I know some people will have questions, but at the end of the day, it's gonna be maybe 5 to 7 total games a year where those lights are gonna be on. And if they want the opportunity to fundraise for it, and they came up with 54 signatures, they absolutely should.
I'm just delighted that the boosters is working to help
They
help
are
with the funding on
very,
it, so.
we're very lucky with the sports that we have in this town. Go ahead, Claude.
Just, we're just a short notice for the public in this meeting, but the planning board will give all the residents in that neighborhood an opportunity to weigh in on their points of view. Is that correct?
Absolutely. That's sort of where I wanted to have that discussion, was at the planning board. Anybody else? Patty, can I get a roll call?
Counselor Morris,
Yes.
Counselor DeBrito,
Yes.
Counselor Klepak,
Yes.
Counselor Green,
Yes.
Counselor Foss.
Yes.
Counselor Frankie,
Yes.
Counselor Thomas.
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
I'm gonna let you read the next one, and then I'll come back.
All right, moving on to Resolution 240-2021.
A resolution providing for refer to planning board request to rezone 114 College Avenue from commercial C to commercial A.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Patty,
Any-
just for point of order, like, it's 144, not 114, just in case somebody from 114's watching this right now, I'm like, whoa, hold on a second. It's 144.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Counselor Green.
So I'd like to offer an amendment to this resolution based on discussions that the Housing Committee has been having over the last few weeks. We've coincidentally been talking about zoning changes that would allow for more housing in the city. And so we'd like to offer, or we'd like to ask the planning board to consider a broader rezoning in this area that would go from Maple Street to Broadway on College Avenue, which would include this property. And it would be a new commercial zone, C1, that would allow apartments and also require tree planting along College Avenue, so that zoning changes in this area could be accommodated, but with adequate greenery that would be appropriate in a residential area.
I'll second that.
I think I need a summary of that amendment. That was very long.
Okay, it was. I wanted to explain it at first, and now I'll read the
Okay.
proposal.
Thank you.
So the proposal is to rezone properties currently zoned Commercial C on the west side of College Avenue from the south side of Maple Street to Broadway Street to a new Commercial C1 zone. The new zone would allow apartments and require tree planting along College Avenue at a minimum, and other things could be discussed at the planning board as well. And I want to thank Ann Beveridge for coming up with this language and helping us advance this proposal.
Thank you. I think I have it. Is there a second?
Yes. Second.
And so just to boil this down for the public a little bit, the issue here is that currently residential properties are not allowed in Commercial C. Although we actually have some residential properties that are currently in Commercial C, so this is partly to rectify that situation, plus allow potentially for some further development of residential properties in the commercial zone, which would start to help alleviate some of the housing issues that we have in town. It's one of the steps that we need to take. So that's just to summarize for everybody what we're talking about. Anything else from the council? Councilor Foss?
I just want to ask the planning board specifically, just like last time, let's get some great notes. You know, I'm probably going to be there myself, but let's get some great notes back to us so we can make informed decisions when it does come back. So,
anyone else from the council? Councilor Frankie?
This, as I understand it, Councilor Green, this is just a first step in looking at all of the city's entire plan. Is that correct?
Yes, well, in terms of, it's a zoning, a look at zonings has been discussed as something that the city is looking at. This is just one idea that the Housing Committee has explored as a way to expand housing opportunities in the city. And the idea of taking this a section rather than one property here, one property there, is to really explore as to what might work there in a smaller section, so that we can potentially add zones in other areas. But rather than just taking one property, especially since there may be others who want the same consideration, it makes more sense to take it, look at a larger section of the street than one house here and there. Does that answer your question?
So does it's a step to move away from the contract zoning with all of the favoritism that appears in those kinds of situations. Is that correct?
Well, that's not the primary purpose of it. The primary purpose of it is to create zoning that fits the needs of the city. But this would in fact have bring more equality to neighborhoods, so that we don't have a commercial A next to commercial C, etc. A patchwork. We would work towards something that's more consistent in the city policy. Yes, this is just one small step, and there's much more to be considered in terms of looking at zoning in the city, but that's to be considered at a future date.
Well, it sounds to me like it's a good step forward. I look forward to the discussion at the planning board.
Great, and if I could just put in a plug now. I missed my chance on housing updates, but I do want to encourage people to attend our conference on December 7th. We'll be discussing issues like this that affect all neighborhoods of the city. And we have a keynote speaker, Jeff Levine, who is a specialist in zoning. He's he sits on the Commission to Increase Housing Opportunities in Maine by studying zoning and land use. He's a professor at MIT, and he's also the owner of Levine Planning Strategies. So it's a great opportunity to hear someone with quite a lot of experience and vision for what can happen in a city with housing and zoning reforms.
And how do you go about attending the conference?
So we are just rolling out our registration. There will be a link on the city's webpage. It is an online link. If you need to register in some other way by paper, you can. There's a number to call, and I can leave instructions with the city administration, so you can reach someone if that's a barrier. My number is on the city's webpage. Feel free to call me, or the conference committee chair is Peter Fair with Habitat for Humanity, and actually I believe the link is on the Habitat for Humanity website, Facebook page, so you can go there to register as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Council Chairman, for indulging us in this little side conversation.
Anyone else from the council? Anyone from the public? All right, seeing none, we'll take a vote on the amendment.
Council Morris?
Yes.
Council DeBrito?
Yes.
Council Klepak?
Yes.
Council Green?
Yes.
Council Foss?
Yes.
Council Frankie?
Yes.
Council Thomas?
Yes.
Vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Move as amended.
Second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll take a roll call.
Council Morris?
Yes.
Council DeBrito?
Yes.
Council Klepak?
Yes.
Council Green?
Yes.
Council Foss?
Yes.
Council Frankie?
Yes.
Council Thomas?
Yes.
Vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
About time.
All right, I'm back. Thank you for the intermission. Moving on to Order 241, 2021.
An order providing for acceptance of funding by Friends of Quarry Road for Alpine Rope Tow Quarry Road Trails.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Frankie.
Does this entail any expenditure by the city at Quarry Road?
Steve?
City's going to provide some in-kind services to help the contractors get their rope tow installed, but this particular grant or donation is going to cover the expense of all of the equipment that is included in the rope tow assembly.
Councilor Klepak.
Yeah, is this projected to be online for this winter?
Is it going to be
Yes.
opera? Yep, there you go. Steve said yes. Anyone else? Patty, can I get a roll call?
Council Morris?
Yes.
Council DeBrito?
Yes.
Council Klepak?
Yes.
Council Green?
Yes.
Council Foss?
Yes.
Council Frankie?
Yes.
Council Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Resolution 242, 2021.
A resolution providing for authorizing renewal of a special amusement license to VFW Forrest J. Pear Post Number 1285, doing business as VFW Forrest J. Pear Post Number 1285.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, Patty, can I get a roll call? Oh, there goes Claude. Go ahead, Claude.
Oh, I just think it would be appropriate, Mr. Mayor, for you to thank our veterans for their service at this point.
I did that, and actually on Thursday, I went out and gave medals to our veterans that served over at Lakewood, and we put out a proclamation on Thursday.
Amen.
But absolutely, I want to point out that I listed a bunch of names of city employees and their and the where they were. I didn't put Rick in because Rick is a city councilor. But Rick, I appreciate you too, buddy.
Do it again in a heartbeat.
I appreciate that. Anyone else?
Is the proclamation on the website?
It should be. It was put out, and I read it out loud also, and it's been videotaped and put online.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, sir. Patty, can I have a roll call?
Council Morris?
Yes.
Council DeBrito?
Yes.
Council Klepak?
Yes.
Council Green?
Yes.
Council Foss?
Yes.
Council Frankie?
Yes.
Council Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Moving on to Resolution 243, 2021.
A resolution providing for issuance of a second-hand license to Ray Edgerton, doing business as Persona.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion?
Does she want to talk about her business?
Do you want to talk about your business?
Hi, my name's Ray Edgerton. I also go by Ray Vaughn. That's my middle name. I'm opening a secondhand vintage store at 225 Main Street, Suite 102. So currently Father Jimmy's is in the front, so my door to my business will be on the side. I grew up in Waterville, moved away to New Hampshire when I was 19, and just moved back 3 years ago. So, yeah, that's it.
Welcome back.
Giddy up.
Good luck.
Any other questions? Patty, can I get a roll call?
Council Morris?
Yes.
Council DeBrito?
Yes.
Council Klepak?
Yes.
Council Green?
Yes.
Council Foss?
Yes.
Council Frankie?
Yes.
Council Thomas?
Yes.
Vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Moving on to Resolution 224, 2021.
It's 244.
244.
A resolution providing for bid
pulled the
award
214.
Municipal Resources Incorporated.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion?
I would just have Steve explain what this is.
Steve, you want to explain this one?
Just quickly, this is a contract to conduct the salary study that we budgeted for in this fiscal year. The price that we are paying here is $35,000. We had budgeted $50,000, so we came in under.
Very good. Any other questions? All right. Patty, seeing none, can I get a roll call?
Council Morris?
Yes.
Council DeBrito?
Yes.
Council Klepak?
Yes.
Council Green?
Yes.
Council Foss?
Yes.
Council Frankie?
Yes.
Council Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Resolution 245, 2021.
A resolution providing for bid award Parks and Recreation equipment.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, Patty, can I get a roll call?
Council Morris?
Yes.
Council DeBrito?
Yes.
Council Klepak?
Yes.
Council Green?
Yes.
Council Foss?
Yes.
Council Frankie?
Yes.
Council Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Moving on to Resolution 246, 2021.
A resolution providing for a contract award through Maine Power Options.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Steve, you want to tell us about this?
Yes, this is a contract that will be based on collective bids done by Maine Power Options. It's a process that the city has used numerous times before. The bids are alive for only a matter of days or hours. So when you vote on this tonight, we will lock in a price as of today that we'll sign the contracts tomorrow. This will cover all the fuels for police, fire, and the heating fuels for all the city buildings.
What are we getting for a
And
price?
the prices are substantially good.
What's substantially good?
Pardon me?
What's substantially good?
It's in your agenda packet. We put it in there this afternoon.
I pulled it this morning. That'd be great. Thanks.
I thought the prices looked pretty fair too. So for diesel, $264, gasoline, $264, and for heating oil, $265.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Can we get those prices?
I'll contract in with that. Jeez.
Forget going to Cumbies. I'm coming to visit you. Wow. That's a lot in taxes. I mean, think of the difference. Wow.
We're gonna form an association for that kind of stuff.
Right? Forget talking about power at the state level. We need some local. All right. Patty, can I get a roll call on that?
Council Morris?
Yes.
Council DeBrito?
Yes.
Council Klepak?
Yes.
Council Green?
Yes.
Council Foss?
Yes.
Council Frankie?
Yes.
Council Thomas?
Yes.
Vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
All right. Moving on to Order 247, 2021.
An order providing for renaming George Edwards Drive.
Move to adopt?
Second.
Steve, can you give us a story on this? Somebody bought the property, wants to name it after his wife?
That's the story.
All right.
Wow. Way to let him do the story.
And I had a big presentation ready for that.
Yeah. 14 slides deep.
That's why I was trying to cut it off.
Thank you.
Any questions? Go ahead, Claude.
That's just a routine request, isn't it, Steve? If, and changing the name of the street, but if you're the only person on the street, is that, am I correct there?
Yes, especially in a case like this where there's only one property owner on the street. It was probably originally a private way that was just named for the owner's wife. I think so. But now it's going to be named for another owner's wife. And when they sell it again, we'll name it again.
I mean, you're the only house on that road.
Yep.
Any other questions? Patty, can I get a roll call?
Council Morris?
Yes.
Council DeBrito?
Yes.
Council Klepak?
Yes.
Council Green?
Yes.
Council Foss?
Yes.
Council Frankie?
Yes.
Council Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
All right, moving on to Resolution 248, 2021.
A resolution providing for authorizing issuance of a marijuana registered caregiver license to caregiver number 9.
Move to adopt?
Second.
Any discussion? Patty, can I get a roll call?
Council Morris?
Yes.
Council DeBrito?
Yes.
Council Klepak?
Yes.
Council Green?
Yes.
Council Foss?
Yes.
Council Frankie?
Yes.
Council Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
All right. Moving on to the last, where did this go? I flipped it too soon. Order 249, 2021.
An order providing for authorizing the city manager to execute a ground lease at LaFleur Airport with MEVS Energy Waterville LLC for use as a solar farm.
Move to adopt?
Second.
Steve, you want to tell us about this?
Yes, I believe that Bill Lee, our legal counsel, is here as well. He can get into any of the real details that you want to know about the lease, but generally speaking, this is a lease for a number of acres on the northeast corner of the main runway at the airport. It's going to house a solar farm that is going to produce in the range of 5 to 7 megawatts of power. It's been in the process for well over a year, And we finally come to an arrangement where the company that will be leasing the property to is going to pay the city $500,000 in order to acquire the lease, and they'll be paying us also $1,600 a month for rent on the property itself. The payments will come $250,000 on signing the lease, and the other $250,000 will come when the solar farm becomes operational. And there's a bond in place to guarantee that second payment.
So even if they don't build it, we're still going to get that money.
Correct.
Any other questions? Patty, can I get a roll call?
Just one more
Bill?
thing. I'd like to thank Bill Lee for all the work he did on this. There was a lot of wordsmithing and back and forth between us and the Synergy group, and Bill's a champion.
Did you hear that, Bill?
Yes.
I want to thank you too when he sends you the check. All right, Patty, can I get a roll call?
Counsel Morris,
Yes.
Counsel DeBrito,
Yes.
Counsel Klepak,
Yes.
Counsel Green,
Yes.
Counsel Foss.
Yes.
Counsel Frankie,
Yes.
Counsel Thomas.
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Mayor, at this time, I'd like to request a recess for 5 minutes, given the amount of people here and the discussion items that are about to ensue.
So be it. Done. Okay. 5-minute recess. 8. Amy got her pen? We're good? I don't know, not for this meeting. She doesn't have enough ink. She needs a second pen. All right, discussion. Patty, you want to read this one off?
Direct the city manager to investigate or pursue acquisition of the Sacred Heart Church on Pleasant Street for use as feeding location and overnight shelter for homeless population and for other community uses.
All right, so I'm gonna start this one off. There's a lot of misinformation jumping around. And I think the first line of this is the most important. Direct the city manager to investigate. Months ago, somebody tried to buy this church, and the city sort of botched it. When that happened, I went to Steve, and I said, Steve, I have an idea. I don't know if it'll work, but I think that we should discuss it. What if we bought the church, sold off the rectory, bid it out, however you want to do it? I originally said maybe sell it to the Bacchus group because they were the ones that are originally interested, and I didn't want it to appear as though we tried to hamstring them when they were trying to buy the church, and then we swoop in and tried to do it ourselves. Everyone has ideas for what this building can be, or what any of these buildings can be. I keep looking at this, and I'm looking at overnight shelter. Yes, some people have an idea of doing that. I'm not into duplicating of services. The homeless shelter does a good job. There's a lot missing from this, but I've gotten a lot of emails in support. I've gotten some from counselors that are not in support. And again, I think it's because it's been convoluted. Everything you see under this discussion header were ideas that were thrown out at the wall, not ideas that we are ultimately going to end up with. I do think that this building, if you sell off the rectory, and depending on what you do with the building in the back, and what we might be able to pay for this building, we could probably take it for really cheap. We have been without a city council chambers. We keep jumping around. We've moved, what, 3-4 times in the last couple of years? This is not our permanent home. We must start looking for a place where we can do it. I know that we'll have another option at the next discussion, but I think everybody should calm down. Nothing is set in stone. This is literally the beginning of the discussion. We're just having it in public. So to get emails from counselors who are trying to find different ways for this not to be a thing, don't find me more problems. Find me solutions. Bring me solutions to the problems that we have. Find me at council chambers. When we discussed this property, residents talked about a community center. That is something that we can do in this space. We want to feed people. We want to take care of the people that live in our city. We need a space that can do all of those things. We should have a heating and cooling center somewhere in our town. Is this the building? Maybe, maybe not. But this is how we start that discussion. If somebody pops up and wants to bring a heating and cooling shelter to our city, great, do it. We're welcoming it. This property may not be it. So before everybody gets up in arms about what's going to be used in this property, there's going to be so much more discussion to be had. This is just the beginning. I'll open it up to other questions. You got it?
Diane's got her hand up. Is there
I don't. Who?
one of the attendees?
Oh.
I think.
Diane? Can we bring Diane in? She's online.
I think, have I been unmuted?
You are unmuted, ma'am.
Hi. Hello, Jay.
Hello.
And the rest of the council members. Jay, I mean, I think you've made some opening statements that may be helpful because I think perhaps like some other people, I've heard of some very concrete proposals that seem to have gone on maybe the past few weeks where people think they've been told that maybe they're going to get this building for $1. Perhaps the rectory should, because of another entity that was looking to buy the property, would be given opportunity to buy the rectory without it being an open bidding. So I have sent testimony to you, which I am prepared to read. And if it's inaccurate, I certainly want to be corrected. So I have some testimony to read, but it does seem like, Jay, that Mayor, excuse me, I'm calling you Jay, but Mayor Coelho, it does seem like you are at earlier stages than perhaps what may be assumed. So please, again, you feel free to correct my own testimony. It's about a page and a half. It might take 4 minutes instead of 3 to read.
I'm going to give you the extra.
Is that all right?
It absolutely is.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. My name is Diane Weinstein, and I'm a retired social worker with a background of over 30 years in direct services, education and training, and policy for persons with mental illness or substance use disorders, or persons who are at risk of homelessness or have been homeless. I do strongly support Waterville City government immediately financing projects to help persons needing food assistance and who are homeless. However, I do not want to link financing solutions for those persons with historic preservation of the Sacred Heart, unfortunately abandoned church, that I know at one time was listed on the market for $595,000, and I understand may have been lowered to $400,000. I understand that there have been several meetings with several people and legislative officials, which were not open to the public, including with Starfish Village, a faith-based ministry, to purchase this property to provide food assistance and emergency or residential services for homeless persons. Simultaneously, I may be under the understanding that the rectory has, which is a beautiful multi-story home, may be in discussion with a local business owner for $150,000. This price may or may not be market value, as this building alone has not been on the market. Regardless of the good intentions of both Starfish Village and the entity wanting to purchase the rectory, I believe that I want to make sure that Waterville City government is not favoring one entity over another, or others who have the capacity to serve persons needing food assistance or who are homeless. Of course, nor should Waterville government favor one private citizen or another to purchase a desirable building such as the rectory. If the cost that's being discussed for that particular piece is $150,000, I think there may be several other persons or businesses that might be interested, including someone who might even consider using that property for persons who have rental certificates, because that's been very difficult to find affordable housing. But of course, that's another issue. If Waterville City government does decide to purchase this property, then I think they should put out a request for proposals articulating desired goals and outcomes for such a property, where all eligible bidders would have a process to do this. Of course, that would be something like to include a fair scoring process, and the people reviewing the bidding would have no connections to any of the bidders, to prevent favoring one entity over another. That's sort of a standard way that requests for proposals and the bids are handled. If the Waterville City government plans to pay off the purchase of the Sacred Heart property by selling this multi-story building, the rectory, then again, for fairness, the process should be open to the public. I do want to go back to my opening statement, which is that I do think it has been unfortunate, though, to somehow link historic preservation with the importance of developing a Waterville plan for persons needing food assistance and who are homeless. If the city wants to use, and I think, Mayor, you spoke to this actually, if the city wants to use substantial funds to purchase or develop a building site for an emergency shelter or for another model of residential supportive services or for food services, I believe there are other properties that should be explored. This week, I alone looked at several commercial sites in Waterville, and there were some ranging from 189,000 to 450,000 that really might have been appropriate for combining both of those services. But I also think another option would be for the city this year to rent space for those emergency services, perhaps before rushing in to buy a property. I am also someone who does really believe in the separation of church and state, and so I'm concerned that buying the Sacred Heart Church might seem to be setting a precedent. Why would the city not then feel compelled to purchase any religious property that a congregation could no longer afford to maintain? I also want to note the City Council has recently discussed developing a plan to identify and repurpose historic properties. So I do think jumping in now to buy the Sacred Heart Church before this committee has been established is a little bit, I think, is premature. And of course, I'm assuming that this committee looking at historic preservation would look at properties besides former religious entities. My final paragraph is, I would be thrilled if the Waterville city government wants to immediately develop a plan to invest $500,000 or more on projects to address homelessness, the lack of affordable housing, and to provide additional money to programs in our community helping persons who need food assistance. There is a real urgency in our community to do this. But I do not believe, as others may, that there's a similar urgency to purchase the Sacred Heart Church. Helping people in immediate need in our community should be our top priority at this time, not historic preservation. And thank you very much for letting me go on.
So Diane, just to touch on a few points for you. The restoration of a historical building is at the bottom of my priority list. It just so happens that this is a building that also qualifies for preservation, but that isn't the end goal of what the idea was. I really thought of a community center where we could have council chambers, and people will have other ideas as to what the downstairs or the upstairs of this building will look like. I agree with you that the building in the back should be housing. If selling the rectory should go out to bid. Again, you all got information that was a byproduct of just having a conversation. When I literally said $150,000 to $200,000. That was my best guesstimate of what that property might be worth, but not the final value of what it would be worth. It was just a guesstimate that people grabbed onto and held on. There are other things that we can do in these spaces, like food distribution. There are so many plans out there and so many different ideas. And again, if we decided that we even wanted to buy this building, we're months, 6 months, half a year out. This wasn't about doing anything immediately. Like I said, we are in the early investigative stages of seeing if this is even a viable project. If we're gonna spend good money on a bad project, it's not worth it. I've always said that with all the deals that we've done, that if it doesn't make financial sense and it doesn't help and increase the community feel, then I don't want to be a part of it. And I agree that other entities will have the opportunity to pitch or try to get leases from the city if we ever decide to buy this building. Again, this is the earliest of stages. I wanted this to be a public discussion so that nobody thought any weird backroom deals are happening. That's not what this is about. This is about making sure that everyone who lives in this community has an opportunity to talk about the ideas that they have. This just looked like a building to me that fit some of those requirements, and that's why I brought it. Go ahead, Rick.
If I may address Ms. Weinstein?
Please.
Diane, is she still here?
Yes.
During your testimony that you just gave, you'd spoken about a meeting that was not open to the public. Could you elaborate on that?
Am I muted or on?
No, you're on. We can hear you.
Okay. I have heard from people that there have been some meetings with Starfish Village, where there might have been some council people, there might have been some legislators, talking about leasing for $1, and in part this exchange with this, the person who previously came up with the idea to purchase the property to maintain historic preservation, that there was sort of going to be sort of this immediate sale. And so that's what I've heard. And I've heard it from a couple of people, someone who might have been invited to the meeting or for discussion. And so that's what concerns me. But I also want to thank, I do know the mayor has done an incredible amount of work on, as well as Starfish Village, to outreach to homeless people in our community. Laudable, incredible outreach to folks. And I really want to commend them. I just, want to see a fair bidding process and a broader plan. How do we serve people? Because if I were homeless or working with homeless people and we need an emergency shelter, that's a pretty cold building. And if there are other places to do emergency shelter that we could pay similar costs, I would say, what's going to best serve homeless people and folks needing the emergency food services?
Go ahead, Rick.
So I'm going to stick to this meeting thing. Mr. Daly, were you aware of any said meeting with any counselor, with any other particular groups? How did this ball get rolling? Can we?
I absolutely was aware of it. I called for the meeting.
Okay.
Turn your mic on.
No. So there were multiple meetings. What Diane is trying to say is that there were elected representatives from the state and Starfish that got together and had a meeting on their own, which to me sort of makes sense. People are going to come up with ideas. But what you're about to talk about, Steve, is not what she's asking.
Okay.
What Steve is about to mention is that last week we had a meeting with KV Cap, the homeless shelter, Starfish Village. I was there, Councilor Green was there, Chief Massey was there, Chief Essler was there, and we discussed this building. I plainly asked every single one of those organizations if there was any interest in using this building for any of the initiatives that they may think were coming forward. That was open. That was not a weird secret meeting. It happened at the police department. There were like 30 to 40 people there. Representatives from the homeless shelter, representatives from KV Cap, and Starfish Village. We were literally batting around ideas of what we could possibly use this for. And I got to hear from the homeless shelter, and they didn't want it. So when I started looking at some of the things for overnight shelter, it didn't make sense. Those are things that we discussed as possibilities, but somehow ended up in the description for this discussion, which it really shouldn't have. Anything that the homeless shelter is doing, anything that Starfish is doing, and anything that KV Cap is doing is totally a separate conversation from possibly buying this building.
So here's my point of this questioning. I've been to the planning board meetings. I've sat on this council. I've been through the public hearings. The last point of the church projects that I knew of was when Jen's group, Bacchus, was reconvening, coming back to their own drawing table to figure out what they could do, and that's where that's where it stopped. Now, that being said, had I gotten an invite, and if anybody can produce me an email, I have searched the keyword church from my entire inbox. If anybody can tell me that I missed an email, then I will shut up right here, right now.
You did not.
Why did I not get an invite to this meeting? Because it would have been one of those meetings that I would have gone to and been informed prior to, well, I got the first email on Sunday that this whole proposal was starting to gain traction. Because like I said, the last thing that I knew personally was Jen's group was reconvening on their own drawing board, and that they were going to, last words out that I heard was that they were going to reapproach. And now that track has totally changed. Not that I'm against the proposals and the thought process, okay? The problem that I have is there was a meeting that happened that some of us, by the sounds of it, did not get an invite to. Whether we showed up or not, information is key. Second of all, while I'm here, it's another one of these instances, and again, please don't get me wrong. I like the ideas. I'm open to listening and figuring out how we get from here to there, okay? But this is another instance where we went from $0 investment from the city to, from what I can see on numbers that city manager has put on his report, almost $700,000 minus the sale of the rectory if that happens.
No. Sorry, go ahead.
Hold on. Another point is that I've sat here long enough now that we keep saying that we don't want to be landlords. We have properties come in, properties go back out. We've sold a fair amount of properties for tax lien and such. So by purchasing this property, we would be kind of hypocritical of ourselves and be landlords. Minus everything else that they're talking about, and everybody wants to, whatever comes of this. And my last piece on my list is, I would like to hear from Jen's group as to what happened, because again, we have, by the sounds of it, we've destroyed something that we had somebody that was going to take care of it, and they realized that they had hurdles to get over after the last planning board meeting that I attended.
Hi, Jen.
Hi. So I had prepared something, but now I'll answer what you're asking. And I'm very surprised to hear some of what I'm hearing tonight, because I had gone to the city with the proposal that the sanctuary and the church be used as city council chambers, and was told very firmly, we are not interested in using that space as city council chambers. I had gone to the city council chamber search committee and said, this is a location that could be used as a heating and cooling shelter and city council chambers. Now it seems as though that's the idea they're running with. It's one that I was very specifically told, no, we're not interested. So we, back to square one, we had been over a year trying to purchase this building. We had our event center idea that people didn't really like. So we reconvened. We met with the soup kitchen at the church, and Providence would have it. Rev Mo was there also looking at the church. I think we looked at each other and thought, well, crap, this is not what we wanted. But we talked outside of the church building, had come up with a plan, and we had a plan for the office building to turn it into an emergency housing. We, for Starfish Village, had that plan, that they would be working with the Waterville area soup kitchen, and that the lower portion of the church would be providing services and the soup kitchen, that the rectory would be used as a house for the business partners, what our original search was for a property for them. but we just couldn't come up with the final piece, which was the upstairs of the church building. And with my hands tied and no revenue from that location, without the event center producing income, I would be making just payments to the debt service on that building. I would be paying rent, paying the heat, but how was I going to fix up the building? There's a lot of work that has got to be done on that building. And it's better than I had originally thought when I got all of the proposals and all of the estimates, but it's a lot of money. And without income from the property, I can't fix up the property. So that's where, if we had been able to figure out something in that upper level of the church, we would have gone forward with the project. But what we could come up with was then us, once again, having to go in front of the planning board with a proposal. And as you all know the history of that, I am giving a vote of no confidence that the planning board has the ability to fairly assess our proposals. So there was not a chance I was going to go in front of them and go through another 6-month process where, you have a planning board with a whole bunch of conflicts, and people really, that's a whole other subject. But I feel like there needs to be some discussion about the planning board, the fact that they don't ever state when they have a conflict of interest. When they do, it's only when pressured, and it's only when you say, specifically, could you address this conflict of interest you might have? And they get to say, oh, well, I might have that conflict, but I'm going to vote that I'm not conflicted. I feel like I'm able to just make good judgments. I mean, you guys conflict yourself out if there's even the hint of impropriety.
I did it earlier.
So I think that proves the point. Whereas they get to decide for themselves, oh, no conflict. My husband's putting a petition out against this project, but I am completely impartial. I mean, it's ridiculous. 2 planning board members are dating. How is that not a conflict? I'm a little off topic, but I did get away from my notes. But I can say, if we'd gotten the last puzzle piece together, we would still be in that project. I just couldn't go in front of the planning board again. Or just chose not to.
Thank you, Jen. That's all I've got.
Councilor Thomas and Councilor Frankie.
I appreciate Councilor Foss's concerns. However, I don't take issue with councilors taking the initiative to have meetings with people or the mayor. Many discussions start that way. I've certainly done it myself over the years. But I do think that as elected officials, we have to be very clear in our communications with people as to not give false hope, raise expectations, because people do tend to take things that you say and run with them, especially as an elected official. And so you have to be very clear about the point of the discussion you're in, what is really moving forward and what is not, what the process is to move things forward. And then I have a question, where is the Catholic Church in this discussion? Because many of these things we're talking about for the uses for this property don't necessarily involve the city purchasing this property. The Catholic Church could offer up this property for the soup kitchen, for a warming center, for all of these things that we're talking about. Those things could happen without the city even being involved. And so I don't know if those discussions have been had. And I don't know what their resistance is. And perhaps there needs to be more public discussion about that, because, you have an entity whose mission is many of these things. And so why are they not doing more to support these sort of uses of the building? Why does the city have to step in? And so, again, I just think we need to be very clear with the way we communicate with people, not raise people's expectations. Yes, the city manager came to me. I'm on the search committee for the building for the council chambers or a permanent location. And I just honestly, it's too much building. It's more than we need for a council chambers. And before we could even consider purchasing a property like that, we'd have to do a lot of diligence to figure out exactly what we're getting ourselves into, which would probably involve us spending a fair amount of money to find out what we're getting ourselves into in the first place, you know, before we make a bigger commitment. So we just need to be more, I think, conscious of how these things take on a life of their own and make sure we're clear in how we communicate with people.
I would say, just to answer your one question, we haven't had those conversations. That's part of getting him to investigate. We weren't going to even remotely try to have those conversations until we had this one. It wouldn't have been worth it. It wouldn't have been worth trying to get Steve to start having preliminary conversations with the diocese to figure out what we can do with this building until we gave him permission to do so. Which is what is all we're looking to do. Give him permission to investigate the possible uses of this building. Councilor Frankie. And then Revmo, I'll let you go.
Let me start by echoing what Councilor Thomas just said, that this is way too big for us to consider for council chambers. In fact, I would note, Mr. Mayor, that we have not had a meeting of the committee that's looking for council chambers since we decided to rent the Elms on a temporary basis. Indeed, later in this meeting, we're going to discuss possibly having council chambers in the Hall School space. So I think you've gotten a little ahead of yourself to bring this proposal up. And as Councilor Thomas noted, you must be careful when you're talking to people, Jay, that there aren't things that can be misconstrued from what you say.
Are we talking about people having private meetings?
What I'm talking about, Jay, is that you're willing to go out and talk to people about your great ideas, but you're sometimes your words can become misconstrued, and people get the wrong idea about things. It's just a cautionary note to you that you are in a position of high responsibility as the mayor, and people think that when you speak that you're speaking for the entire city. Anyway, I also want to note Councilor Foss that I have not been involved in any of these discussions, even though the Sacred Heart Church actually is in my ward about 2 blocks from where I live. And I'm frankly a little disappointed that Jay and the city manager have not involved me at all in these discussions.
Because
Finally,
there haven't been discussions.
There was a meeting of 30 to 40 people. Sorry, Claude, I'm gonna jump in with you, beside you. You just said there was a meeting of 30 to 40 people.
Finally, I just want
How many counselors were there? How many
One.
counselors were there? Because this conversation is going on to ad infinitum here. I want to know how many counselors were there. If it was not past the legal limit for public notice, then we're wasting our time talking about this.
Right. One. Rebecca Green was the only counselor there.
Thank you.
Can I speak to this issue?
Please.
Because, yeah. So I think this is important to clear up. I approached the city manager about holding a meeting a couple of weeks ago because of all of the concerns that people have in the community about the homeless situation. There was talk of tent cities, Denise at GA in the Waterville city was having trouble. I wanted to bring people together. It was not to talk about Sacred Heart. It was to talk about homelessness and try to get people all to the table to brainstorm a solution. So I just want to really clear that up. It was no secret meeting. There was one counselor there. There were members of every organization working on homelessness that that we knew of, and the chief and fire, fire and police chiefs. So this came up at the meeting and then took on a life of its own, the idea of Sacred Heart. But it was not a meeting to discuss this as a proposal.
No, it was not. Thank you, Rebecca. Rev Mo.
Thank you. I think I can answer several questions right away. First of all, the meeting that we're talking about, I can tell you everybody who was here. I have a photographic memory for that. It was the fire chief, the police chief, mayor, the city manager, myself, Reverend Nancy Finland, Reverend Ian Lynch, Rebecca Green. There were people from KV Camp, Andrea Pascoe, Monica Grady, Katie Spencer White, and Dave Savetsky, and Colleen Madigan. And this meeting was called by the Interfaith Council, who was putting pressure on Rebecca Green and Katie and other people in the city, asking a simple question: where the hell are all the homeless people going to go in winter? Okay? And this was predicated on the fact that I had just heard from a number of case managers that people who were in hotels, and Katie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, you know the story, were in hotels in Augusta, and were going to be evicted within like a matter of days. Within a matter of days. And we were a full court press. There was no time to send out, I mean, if the whole council wanted to come, anybody could have come. But this was started out as an initiative between me, the shelter, people who were working on the housing committee, and some city people, and it was the Interfaith Council, Starfish Village, and others. And I talked to Colleen Madigan about it. What's going to happen with this? We have got so many days, and these 30 families are going to be out on the street. That was the issue. That's what we talked about. And in that conversation, I said, and this comes up every winter since I've been here, where do we put people who can't get into the shelter, who are chronically homeless, who are out in the cold? We don't have a warming shelter. And Sean Esler was there, and he and I had talked when I toured the Sacred Heart building, and he had told me that there was some eagerness on the fire department's part to have a warming shelter. That was all. So I talked about it then, and I'm still talking about it. I still don't know where this is going to be. Okay, so that was the meeting. The other thing I want to address is the Catholic Church. To your point, I think numerous people have reached out to the Catholic Church. The Interfaith Council has reached out to the Catholic Church. I wrote the Catholic Church, let me be specific. I wrote the Diocese of Portland because they're the owners of the property. We received no response. Numerous Catholics in the community have received no response. A Catholic priest that I asked contact them received no response. Nick Isgro said that they were not interested in donating the property or doing anything but the hard sale that they were trying to get done. So that's all I can answer to that. I agree with you wholeheartedly. It should be donated. Okay, now I'm going to tell you something that might surprise everybody. I don't give a fig about that church. I think that Jen can tell you that when we met by chance in the parking lot, I said, I don't care about this building. I have no cultural love for it. I was trained as a historian. I don't think it's historically precious. I was looking at tearing the whole thing down and let's get some housing. That's all I wanted. And when I toured it, I saw the building behind it that was leased for office space. There could be leased for office space. I said, maybe we could put apartments here. The Waterville Area Soup Kitchen was already talking to Bacchus because Bacchus had reached out to them, and they were just looking to do something else. Restore something we don't have in this town that we desperately need. And that is a place to go where there's a hot meal. Sacred Heart provided that for decades. People could walk in and eat in dignity. Now they have to stand in line and get sandwiches in parks. So we just wanted to restore that. So when I was there looking at the property, and I was there with Dr. Russell Danner, by the way, because he was even looking at the property, it started a discussion with Jen. It started a discussion with Karen of WASC. And I don't know, pretty soon, I was going to lease property, lease space if they had bought it. And the Waterville United Church of Christ in Starfish Village sent a letter of intent to the lender, to the buyer, that we would lease the space. Then that fell apart. And all I can tell you is I have no offers from the city of Waterville. Nobody from the city of Waterville has approached me and talked to me about leasing anything in any concrete way. But I have told everybody, and good God, everybody on council knows I've been talking about this. And Councilor Frankie, I've been writing emails out to hell and gone. He never answers my emails. So don't tell me this is not extremely transparent, because nobody is more transparent than me. So, no, I have no deals. I don't know what's going on. And the only thing I want is an emergency overnight winter shelter, and I don't care where you put it. And I want a sit-down meals program, and I don't care where you put that. Just do it, okay? And it needs to be done not in 6 months. People are freezing now. And if you want to know who's the person in Waterville, by God, who knows who's out there homeless, you're looking at her. My phone, my cell phone, must be on every John and every damn gasoline station around here. I get phone calls 7 days a week and at night from homeless people. I get calls for gas cards for people who are living in their cars and they need to keep the car on all night. Right now, my garage looks like an army surplus store. Wait a minute, let me finish.
Maureen.
And I have tents and sleeping bags to give to the homeless. So I know how many homeless are out there that are unsheltered.
If you're going to talk into the microphone, please.
I'm
Maureen.
sorry. So that's all I'm about. But there's no private meetings. There have been no offers. I have no deals with the city. The city has proffered me no deal. But if it were to get this space, I would be in line to try to lease something. And we've already talked about sending out, Carly knows this, proposals because it's too big for any one ministry. My ministry is too small to manage it. So yeah, I just want to say, please, there's a lot of transparency here. And there are no secret deals. The Catholic Church, I think, has said no. They're not going to give you this property, but you're all welcome to try again. And I would like you to buy it because I think that might be the fastest thing. But if not, I'd like you to suggest another place for us to go. Thank you.
Go ahead, ma'am.
My name is Sister Lorraine Ryu, and I'm a Catholic. I'm a Roman Catholic at that. And the better thing of me is not only that I'm a Roman Catholic, I'm also a clinical social worker working with gerontology, the older people. I live in a housing unit where we have to be 55 and over and have a certain income. I represent the elders of our community and our state. If you want to look at your census, the greatest and highest population in need in our state, in our city, are the elders. And they're not speaking up like the homeless, but they are the homeless. So what I'm inviting you to do, and what I'm inviting myself to do, is to really discern what are the general needs of our people who are poor. They're not poor in spirit. They are poor financially. And so please think of the elders. There is dire need for housing. We're not looking for a shelter. We're looking for housing. also looking for a person who would negotiate and work through bringing people together. They isolate like everything. I cannot get over it because they don't want to be seen as poor. So let's look at a bigger picture. Let's not be hung up by it's a church. We are the church. And let's all work together and see how we can best not serve the airport or the downtown or the sidewalks or the tar, but address the needs of the people here in Waterville. Amen.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Carly?
Thank you for hearing me. I'm Carla from the Waterville Area Soup Kitchen. I don't have anything long and drawn out to say except for when we were serving at Sacred Heart, we had a lot of elderly that at that time might not have needed the food as much as the companionship. That is definitely needed. We need a place for people to gather to eat. It's not a lot to ask. And just keep in mind, while we're discussing solutions, we get to go home and sleep in a house tonight. There are those that do not tonight. They're sleeping outside. Thank you.
Anyone else? Go ahead, sir.
I'm Tommy Swider. I'm part of Bacchus Group. As Jennifer kind of mentioned, when we were still under contract, we finally gave up, let the contract expire because we're not going to deal with your planning board again. But at the time when we were still under contract, we kind of had things buttoned up. We had Reverend Moe with Starfish Village signed a letter of intent to to lease the office and to lease the downstairs for Waterville Soup Kitchen. I was going to lease the house, and we just needed that extra piece, like Jennifer said, to cover the maintenance costs of the building. Since we couldn't do any sort of events up there, which would have covered the maintenance costs of the building. We invited the committee that's searching for new chambers. We sent out an invitation to that committee. Steve and Patricia showed up. They were the only two. So anyone who's on that committee who says this is all new to them, y'all were invited. Don't be on a committee if you're not going to look at every opportunity that comes along. We were not asking you to buy the building. We were buying the building. We were going to be taxpayers on that building. We were seeing if the city would rent a portion of the space, since you're going to be spending that money somewhere anyway. And so.
And I just want to be clear, I'm on the committee. I was invited to the tour. I told the city manager a week before the appointment that I could not make that time. It was supposed to be rescheduled, and it was not. So that's why I was not there for that.
But you're acting now like you were surprised.
No, I did not.
It wasn't that, Counselor.
Not me.
Again, not Eric. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, I'll be quick. My name is Bill Bassford. I live on Dalton Street in Ward 6. I was out riding around on my bike one really nice day last week. I noticed several fairly large empty or vacant buildings in the area. I'll just mention the former John Martin's Manor on College Avenue. Apparently it's for sale by auction. The sign out front says Keenan Auction, but they didn't have the date on the sign. But anyway, it's going to be auctioned off soon. If you look down on
Didn't Arthur buy that?
Yeah.
His family, yeah.
If you look down on Main Street, the building formerly occupied by the furniture store, right across from the old Jorgensen's location, that's one of Sidney Geller's buildings. The first floor and the second floor are apparently all vacant at the moment. If you cross the 2-cent bridge to Winslow and take an immediate left, before you go through the gate into the Martin's warehouse area, The old office buildings for the paper mill have been sitting there vacant for many years, but they have a for rent sign and several windows on the buildings. So if you want to find something you could maybe rent quickly, there are many possibilities out there. So that's probably enough to mention for the moment, so thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, this is gonna be it. Claude, I'll give you the last one, sir.
I'm Nancy Sanford, and I live in Ward 1, and I work with Starfish Village. I also happen to be a member of the Waterville Church of Christ. And Steve, I was at the beam placing in on Tuesday, and I thought you were quite eloquent about talking about the renaissance of Waterville. And it's exciting to see and be a part of, but Waterville cannot truly have a renaissance unless all people have a place to stay and food to eat and are supported in making their lives more stable. And as Rev Mo said, I don't care where it happens. I just want it to happen, and I want it to happen as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Claude, I'm gonna let you have the last word.
Okay, I've had my name mentioned a couple of times today, but what I'd like to say in particular is that I'm glad to see Reverend Ashbrook step forward and say that she has an open mind and that she doesn't care where where a warming center or where food insecurity is addressed, so that the church is not necessary for those kinds of activities. Here I would like to point out that purchasing the church is a long-term event. Certainly, Mrs. Bergeron knows that real estate deals do not happen quickly. So this is not a proposal that's going to address the needs immediately. Here, I think we need to continue the kind of work that Councillor Green has started in on to find out, come up with a program that will address homelessness and hunger right now, because, you know, next week is Thanksgiving. I believe Councillor Green has a program that she'd like to put forward, and if she's ready to do that, I suggest that maybe the mayor should call a emergency meeting later this week, so that we can put something in place in time for Thanksgiving.
Claude, I absolutely agree with you. Look at that. Clepac, tell your daughter we said goodnight. I saw her come on the screen.
Yeah.
All right, any other discussion on this before we move on to the next topic?
Can I ask a really very easy, quick question of Rev Mo?
Yes.
Rev Mo? Yes, sir. How many?
How many would you need?
Nope. How many are homeless in rough numbers?
Okay, 41.
Thank you.
I'll make it 52.
Okay.
I just got an email from Denise.
We can't hear the answer.
Yeah, we need you to go up there.
Sorry, sorry, Rev.
That's okay, you're all sick of me anyway, so.
Not yet.
Good shot, okay.
We will.
Of course, it's a hard number. My number's collected from the people I've personally met, and I've personally either talked to on the phone, case managers, general assistants, and I would say I know of personally 27 who are homeless. And I've heard, when I add from case managers at KBH, Centria. I just forgot the other agency. Anyway, I counted another 13. And I know of 2 people in cars with children.
2 years ago, I knew a family of 4 living in back of Kmart.
There are still a lot of people back over at Walmart.
And I delivered Thanksgiving food to them until they couldn't possibly eat another ounce. So I get it.
To give you some idea, I did some numbers, if I can just throw this out. The Interfaith Council last winter spent $2,700 in gift cards, and half that money went for gas, and the other was food, and Starfish Village contributed another $1,100. And that was for people who, so all those gas cards were for people who are living in cars. Thank you.
Thanks,
Katie, can you give me an updated number? I know that Revmo's got some from the people that we see on the streets, and she's counting those people, but that is not the total number. Can you give me a better number? I'm just trying to give Rick and the rest of the council a sense of what's actually going on our streets and in the programs in which we're trying, in which I want to say that we are all trying to solve. No one is at each other. We are all looking at different angles of the same issue and trying to attack it in any which way we think that we can that makes a difference. Sorry, Katie, can you please give me a number?
Thank you, Mayor Coelho. For those of you who don't know me, thank you for having me. My name is Katie Spencer White. I'm the president and CEO of the Mid-Maine Homeless Shelter and Services here in Waterville. I'm also an appointed member of the Statewide Homeless Council, and I represent Region 2, which is the Mid-Coast and Central Maine. And you know, we work in this field every day. I can tell you that tonight, under our care, we have approximately 100, give or take. We also have, we've heard concerns, so we every time over the last couple of years that people have reached out to the Mid-Maine Homeless Shelter and Services and asked for us to step in, we've stepped in. When Mid-State Housing Authority asked us to run a FEMA shelter, we said yes, we would do that. So we have been operating on 2 sites for most of the last 2 years since the pandemic started. When the hotels were closing in Augusta, again, I got a call while I was in Seattle asking if Mid-Maine Homeless Shelter could step in. We said yes, so we took on all of the families, households that could not be rehoused. We now have them under our care. We've also heard, and this has always been the case, that we have offered overnight emergency warming shelter space. The last couple of weeks, we've had at least 2 individuals a night who've come in. They're just walk-ons. Typically, the process is when we do an intake at Mid-Maine Homeless Shelter, we do a full intake, right? So people have a bed with us until they are rehoused. I will say this, our ability to rehouse people has dramatically dropped off during the pandemic. I have one of my housing navigators with us this evening, Ashley. She's one of our folks who actually does the hard work of getting people rehoused. Pre-pandemic, we were housing about 30 households a month. We were down to 4 at one point. We're back up to about 10 or 12 a month right now. So I think there's always space to address the concerns. I will say this as well. If people haven't heard, President Biden announced that FEMA funding will continue through the end of March. So we're in negotiations to continue our hotel provision through the end of March. That's super great news. We'll see where that goes. It's really dependent on hotel operators being willing to partner with us. You asked for a number, and I'll end it here. It is really hard to get a hard, concrete figure. There's nobody in America who can tell you how many people are homeless on any given night. It is a moving target. I can tell you that according to the last HUD count, there was about 2,500 individuals in Maine. It's probably 2 to 10 times higher than that. For Waterville, again, it's how long is a piece of string. What we do know, and we work very closely with Kennebec Behavioral Health, which has a street outreach program called PATH. Consistently, what we see over the winter months is that people who are really difficult to stay housed can rely on social supports, and we see the number of people who are unhoused drop off dramatically over the winter months. In anticipation of what we think will happen this winter, again, we've created warming space. We've got capacity right now for 5 walk-ins. We can expand that by another 8. I think part of the challenge is always trying to figure out, watch your data. What are we trending towards? So right now, 2 is the number that we're getting for the walk-ons. Chief Massey, Chief Essler, they can always just drive somebody up, 2 o'clock in the morning, we'll open the doors, we're there, we'll take them in. It's not to say that there isn't a grave need. We don't need to pop something up. People can also walk in, get food. We have showers available. We heard all these things from the community. People need to be able to walk in, have access to a shower. We have that, have access to food. People can come 24/7, get food. It's not what most suggests, which is the lovely sit-down dinner. And I think you're right, dignity, all of the rest of that. We need to figure that out for the long term. But for right now, there is a walk-in space. People can walk into Mid-Maine Homeless Shelter on Colby Street. They can have shelter overnight if the weather is dangerous. We will not turn people away. If the need increases beyond 13 or 14, we'll have to take a look at that and figure out what next steps are. But right now, we're just watching the data and see where we go.
Thank you, Katie.
Sure.
Councilor Green.
Well, I want to thank Katie for that information and for speaking up and letting us know what the Mid-Maine Homeless Shelter is doing. I think it's important to remember that we have this incredible organization in our community, and we have others who are working very hard, all with, as we've said, on different aspects of this extremely complicated problem. We don't even really know how many homeless people there are, as Katie mentioned. But we need to work together to solve this. It's not the city's job. It's not, but the city needs to facilitate the resources we have in our community to address this problem. That's what we can do. But we do need to be collaborative, inventive, resourceful, and invest in these vulnerable people in our community. I write grants for the Knox County Homeless Coalition, so I understand what's going on in that community on the coast. And one of the reasons I ran for city council is because I had a pretty good feeling the same things were happening here. It's a very important issue for us to address, and I think we will if we work together. There's no other way to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. All right, I'm going to move on to the next discussion. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
Just one thing, Mr. Mayor, before you go on. The purpose of this discussion, in my mind, was to inform me as to whether or not I should continue on this road.
Well, how else do you investigate? I mean, that's council decision. You guys have to give them something to do, but
it's not in the form of a resolution, so we really can't tell him to do something, but I think you've got a pretty good feel of I think there's a good consensus, and I can probably say that even from my chair, that we should investigate all avenues, all of them, because we tend to get bound up in well, there's favoritism here, and there's favoritism there, and let's not have that. That would be my #1 goal. Second goal, don't take a project that didn't cost us a dime, and now it's a $700,000 project. Don't beat me for it. I'm just going by numbers that I've got in front of me.
I'm gonna let you go.
Okay? Yeah. Let's do this as economically feasible as possible while meeting the goal. Because like I said at the very beginning, I love these ideas. I have great ears, Councilor Green, and I love to learn. What y'all don't understand is that I've been in those low-income government cheese times of my life. So I don't want to see the kids that I know live down in back of Kmart that took somewhere around 10 to 12 meals. What I don't like is quiet meetings, high numbers, and a deal that went south for really no good reason. Let's fix that.
And as I said, I'm going to give Counselor Frankie the last word, and then we're going to move on to the next discussion.
Okay, I just want to note, echo Councillor Foss, that let's look at all the possibilities, Steve. If there are spaces out there, as Mr. Bassford has indicated, that are less expensive, that we can use to address the issue, let's explore those. The idea of putting all our eggs in the Sacred Heart basket is, I think, not a particularly good idea. As Councillor Frost said, let's look at solutions that are amenable to what we can afford, and still, and at the same time, deal with the problem of hunger and homelessness that I really think we should.
Glad we're having the discussions. Do you have anything else? Are you done? Go ahead, Steve. Any other questions? Do you feel like you have the direction? Do you feel like you have the direction to do what you need to do?
Yes, I do.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for having that tough discussion in an open and honest manner without throwing darts. I appreciate all of you. Let us move us on to the next discussion. I'd like to keep no more darts. Patty, can you read that one off for us?
Determine interest in holding council and planning board meetings at the Albert Hall School if offered as an option by the school department.
Any discussion?
How did this originate?
Steve, give us some background.
Happily. The school department is going to be surplusing, well, reusing or surplusing the Hall School over on Pleasant Street. They are moving the student body that's located there to the junior high school property when they build an addition. I believe that's supposed to open next fall. I'm not certain of that, though. And they have a problem right now because their alternative education program is located at the Home for Little Wanderers, and they are not going to be able to lease that space for another year. So there's been a proposal from within the school department to use the Hall School to house both the adult ed program and the alternative education program. And in that conversation, they have suggested that the gymnasium space, which is right in the center of the building and has open access to Pleasant Street, might be used for city council meetings, planning board meetings, very much the same as this space is being used. And
Warming center.
before they make a decision based on an assumption that the city is interested in doing that, I need to hear from you so I can report to them as to whether or not we are interested.
It's just to me, it's just another temporary solution. And this goes right back to the discussion we just had. It seems like perhaps a better use for the space is a lot of the things that we've been talking about in our last discussion.
We've said this from the beginning. That building needs a lot of work. They didn't want it. They're half abandoning it anyway. We have some real issues like childcare. Part of that building right there, it's got the playground, could be used for childcare. That could be mixed use. That could have some housing in it. That could, again, another one of those buildings where there's a lot of potential and everyone's going to have ideas on how to use it. The school has been having their conversations of how they think they'd like to use it. You guys are going to have to figure out if that's something that you may want to get into.
And that's not the only thing that they have on the table. They have a committee that they've organized to look at possible options, and the Chamber of Commerce is represented on that committee, and they brought a developer to the building to look it over and see if it was reasonable to convert it to housing, and that answer was yes. And the that right now is a significant minority voice on that committee. But if the council isn't interested in using that space for city meetings, I need to let them know that so that they don't proceed under a false understanding.
I'm neither for nor against.
I'm going to give Councilor Frankie an opportunity to get his hand up. Councilor Frankie?
That strikes me as an opportunity for the city to use what the school has as surplus space. I would be interested to see how the financing and stuff would work for that. I mean, we do support the school system with taxes. Would we be paying rent? I mean, there's a couple of questions. I would like to be involved in these discussions, Steve. I should warn you, Jay, though, that if we do that, the school is only 2 blocks from my house. It might incline me to run for re-election.
I mean, I'm okay with that. I plan to be here for a few years, Claude. You might as well stay here with me. You're the second guesser. You keep me grounded. I know it sounds like we argue, but I appreciate you a lot.
Sometimes with a baseball bat.
Hey, whatever it takes. I mean, Claude is always the one that keeps me on my toes, and I've always said that I appreciate that. I don't want anybody to just say yes. I like to be challenged, and I want all of the ideas to go out. So we've had very good, tough discussions today, and we did so very easily. Rebecca.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure I understand the question about the chambers and what the arrangements would be. Is the question, do we want to use the building for council chambers once the school is adapted for new uses after the 4th and 5th grade moves out? Are we being asked if we want to purchase the building, or I just don't understand the timeline and what our obligation would be. Would we be renting in a situation where we have adult ed and alt ed in the building?
I kind of second that. Is this a temporary, are we looking at a temporary or a permanent solution here?
I have no details on that.
Okay. So those, I guess, would be mine and Green's thought process.
I would hope that we wouldn't pay any rent since we own the building.
I would hope not either.
I just want to make sure.
What hair I have left is
I'm
standing
like,
up on
we
the back
already
of my
own the
neck.
building. I'm not trying to pay rent for
Right.
something we already own.
Right.
To ourselves.
If you want the use by the council and the city in general to stay in the conversation, I'll be happy to participate in that and see where it goes. If you're not at all interested, tell me now, because I have other things I can do.
My feeling is it has to be, we shouldn't relocate from this space until we find a permanent solution.
Right.
As long as this space is available, we should stay here. We've bounced around enough. Until we find something that's going to be a permanent solution, we shouldn't be moving around again.
They say it's a permanent spot. Permanent spot.
Hold on, Councilor Green's still going. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Yeah, the larger question here, I mean, it's the same with the church discussion. I mean, what's the best long-term use of that building? Should it no longer be used by the school?
Yeah.
You know, then it reverts to the city. So then we should be having the discussion. How do we want to use that building? So these are these are long-term discussions, both the discussion about the church. I mean, I didn't say this before, but I think it's an interesting idea to consider purchasing the church, perhaps, but it's not something we can jump at. It would be part of, I would say, a larger discussion about, our comprehensive plan for the city. So, yeah, it's hard to say right now without any more details. But.
Thank you, Rebecca. Councilor Klepak.
So, I agree with a couple of the last comments that have been shared. I think thinking about these buildings that we have, we have these needs as a city council for council chambers, and there are needs in the city to help the homeless population, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're trying to fit those needs into these buildings that are incidentally available, which, makes some practical sense. But the buildings themselves, just looking at the structures, seem to lend themselves perhaps to applications a little bit different than the ones we're specifically trying at, given our current needs to fill, right? So, a building like Albert Hall School, there's been talk about, I've heard people who've, in the whirlwind of ideas that people have had for these various buildings, for Sacred Heart, people have talked about the possibility of taking that building and, cutting it up, the inside of it up, and turning it into condos or some sort of, living quarters. One of many, many ideas that have been floated for that space. That seems like undermining a pretty beautiful, grand space inside that building, whereas something like the Hall School seems to lend itself much more to that type of a project, much more in line with the Gilman Street project that we saw on that street. If I was going to pick one of those two buildings, and again, like homelessness as a separate issue, but just trying to meet housing needs in the city, and apartments and units that bodies can live in, whether that's for homeless people or low income or median income individuals, whatever it happens to be. I would pick the Hall School for something like that, well above the Sacred Heart Church. It just seems to be a building better suited to that kind of an application. Certainly that the Hall School is, if Sacred Heart is too big of a piece of cake for council chambers, the Hall School must be as well. I mean, there's all of those classrooms up there. I guess nature abhors a vacuum, and the city could stick bodies in offices up there or something like that. But it seems like, again, there may be other spaces in town that are a little bit better suited to the needs, that particular need that the city has.
Thank you, Councilor Kleepak. Go ahead, Jen, and then I'm going to close out this discussion.
So back when I was trying to purchase Sacred Heart, I had mentioned Pleasant Street is one of those streets you're going to have a problem with. And I had specifically said the Hall School is going to be another building coming up, and you're going to have the same issue. And that street needs some special zoning because you're going to have other buildings. And I think that building would be a perfect place for housing, whether it's mixed housing, a mix of housing and commercial space. That whole street, I think, could be a mix of really great commercial space and housing, and perhaps that study needs to be done. I know there are people in the neighborhood who will just rail against that idea. I get it. But I think perhaps we need to have more than the people who just live on that street. We need to have a study done to see if that could be a place where the city gets a great mixed-use street, a funky kind of lively area for the city. The downtown is going to expand. It's going to grow. It has to grow somewhere. For sure, housing is necessary. And that school could have housing in it. The church, it just doesn't make sense. As much as people keep saying it, if they actually walked through that building, housing doesn't make a lot of sense there. So I just want to say, I think the street, Pleasant Street right now, this is your opportunity to look at that and zone it differently.
Thank you, Jen. All right. Anybody else before we move on? Oh, you raised your hand. I thought you had something. All right. I'm going to move to councilor updates. Any councilor updates? Go ahead, Rebecca.
I'll just put one more plug in for our conference on December 7th, because these are the conversations we want to have. And this is why we're having the conference, so that we can engage the community in discussing how we can create more housing opportunities, appropriate opportunities for people at all income levels in our city, so that we can have a thriving city. So December 7th, look for it on the city webpage. I hope to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Anybody else? All right, we're going to move on to public comments section of the evening. Anybody from the public want to talk about something that is not on tonight's agenda? Now is your opportunity to do so.
How you guys doing? My name is Nick. I live in Waterville, Ward 2. I've been going to school board meetings and talking about why our children are still wearing masks. I know this is the city council, has nothing to do with it, but it is an issue that needs to be brought up. I mean, I see plenty of people in here not 6 feet apart, not wearing a mask, and it doesn't seem to be an issue in here when you guys are more at risk than our children are at. I just was seeing a photo that our kids are getting graded in school for not wearing a mask during lunch. They're getting graded on whether or not they're talking at lunch because they have to take their mask off. This is what's going on in our school, guys. Why are we not talking about this? I started something. I am going to be protesting at school board members' houses. My intent is not to be violent. My intent is to hold these school board members accountable for the decisions that they are enforcing on our children. We are going to these school board meetings and we're speaking and we're not being heard. They're just rolling their eyes. They don't care. Can we get some help? Can we start talking about this? That's all I really have to say.
So I got a couple questions for you now that we have you here and we're addressing this. I have essentially, any time that we have brought up a mask mandate, have shown my disdain for them. A lot of us aren't wearing masks. A lot of us are vaccinated. I have 4 kids in our public schools. Waterville's not perfect. I have my issues with the school department. I deal with it when I have to. I call the administrators. I email them. I try to speak to them. Have you tried reaching out to any of our school board members?
In Waterville, no.
So I would suggest that if you're going to...
But is that going to work? I mean, you just said you did it, right? Has it worked?
It has.
It has.
So I have no issue with your protesting. I have no issue with you doing it. I like every amendment from the first all the way on. My issue is that with your approach, I don't care that you want to protest. Have at it. I've invited you to come protest in front of my house. Leave them alone. But you're
not the one making decisions for our children.
You should start with a phone call and an email.
We have started that way.
Not here in Waterville. You've said so by your own admission.
Yes.
That you have not given our school board members the opportunity to have that discussion with you. And I will tell you that if you go to a school board meeting, they will listen. You may not get the answers that you like, but they are going to be respectful and they are going to listen. And I believe that they deserve the opportunity to be given that courtesy, that you would at least give them the option to hear you in person before you show up at somebody's house with signs. I understand that you don't want to be violent. I understand that you're not trying to intimidate anybody. But if that's your first approach, no one's going to listen to you.
So who said I was going to a Waterville's house?
You're the one saying that you're going to
I never said I was going to Waterville. I came tonight because I was invited by you.
You were.
In an article.
To have this discussion.
To have this discussion.
You could have called any one of us to have this discussion, to express your concerns in this same manner that you and I are having it. We're not yelling at each other. We're not flailing. We're not posturing. We're not flexing. We're just sitting here having a normal conversation. And I'm sorry that other towns may have treated you differently, but that's not how we do business here. We listen to our constituents. We're not always going to get what we want. What was that?
What ward is this gentleman in?
Ward
He didn't
2,
announce-
Flavia's ward.
I announced what ward I was in. I said 2.
Yep, he's in 2. So I would urge you to go to a school board meeting first. I'll go with you.
Okay.
I'll have that discussion. Again, I have 4 children in public schools. You're talking to a man that wouldn't even pierce his daughter's ears until she was old enough to ask. I have 6 people in my house. 4 of them are vaccinated. 2 are not. Do you know why they're not? Because they don't want to. I won't force that on them. I give them a choice.
And that should be the mask issue.
So that is a conversation to be had. I'm not against what we're supposed to, what you want. I'm very against your approach. Take that for what it is. But if you want to go to a school board meeting in this town, and you want to, I read somewhere that you've been to multiple and you're 2-0 and getting bounced out of school board meetings.
And I was respectful at both of them.
I assure you that if you come to ours, nobody's bouncing you out as long as you're being respectful. So that's where I would start. If you want to go protest those other neighborhoods, I can't do anything about those other towns, but in this town, I can offer you a better solution in a better way.
Well, then let's do it.
We don't need the stunts. Let's do it.
It's not a stunt.
It's attention.
You call it a stunt, but you know what? It got attention to it, did it not?
You could have gotten the same attention by picking up the phone.
We've been picking up the phone.
You didn't call me. You didn't call him, her, or anybody on that screen. Not one of us. We would have helped you. Somebody would have talked to you, and somebody would have helped guide you through the right path to make this work. If all you're going to do is make noise, nobody's going to listen to you. You have people on your side that sort of agree with you, but they're not going down that rabbit hole with you.
That's fine.
So if you want to go to one of those meetings, let's do it.
Let's do it.
You have to assure me that A, it's going to be respectful, and we're going to listen, and we will have open dialogue, and anyone you want to bring will be the same.
Watch the videos at both of the school board meetings I went to. I
I've
was
seen
not
'em.
disrespectful,
I've
and I
seen
was
'em.
respectful in both ways. And when I was asked to leave, I left respectfully.
I see that. I don't think that'll happen here. I think people will listen to you. Again, I don't think that we're going to get what you want out of it, but at that point, once you don't,
And at the same time, I know I
Then you're
personally
free.
haven't reached out to Waterville, but I know there's plenty of parents in Waterville that have reached out to their representatives and have gotten nowhere. So that's why this approach has been taken.
All I would say is not everyone agrees with you.
That's fine.
And this is the tough thing as an
We
elected.
live in America. That's the greatest thing about this
is the
country.
tough.
We all don't have to agree.
This is the tough thing as an elected official, is trying to balance all the different views. And this is a really hard time to be a school board member. And every one of those people are elected, and they'll be up for re-election. And if people don't like what they're doing, they can vote them out. And that's the way you handle it. You don't go in front of their house and harass them.
Yeah, this is
we good for the meeting?
During a time when we have record numbers of people in the hospital system here in Maine, and 1/3 of those people in the hospital right now, as Maine is reaching record levels, and physicians in this community, healthcare workers that I know are under tremendous strain, are dealing with those people at the record surge. 1/3 of those people have been vaccinated. 1/3 of those people that are on ICU intubations are fully vaccinated. At no point in this pandemic have we been at this critical stage. People now pretending that the pandemic is over and that precautions are not necessary, are not paying attention to the data. They are not paying attention to the lives that are being lost. We can have discussions about freedom of choice, but assuming
that a elementary school aged child is sufficiently capable of weighing all of the healthcare implications of their behavior at school is not understanding what a child is and the responsibility that adults have to those children. Going in front of an elected official's house and protesting and not using the appropriate channels, as people have said already here numerous times tonight, is not the democratic process. Protest is a resort when the democratic process has failed. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Klepek. Any other counselors at the moment? Future Councilman Thomas McCormick.
I'm gonna back up what Jay just said. You with your phone sitting here recording me right now, and you with the Save America hat, I expect to see your names with a petition walking around just like I did in the last election and running for those positions, or quit making noise and not saying you can make it, you can know. This is the way to do it.
We're not here to argue.
I'm not arguing.
No,
I'm
stop.
making the
Everyone
statement and
stop.
asking you to do it.
Everyone stop. I said that we are going to have a civil conversation, and that is what we have had. I will not let this deteriorate into nonsense. I will see you, sir, at the next school board meeting. Yes, we do. But we are definitely getting to the next school board meeting. Like I said, you and I are going to discuss things. You are not going to like everything I say. I'm not going to like everything you say. But at the end of it, we're going to come out civilly, figuring out a way to fight and find a solution. Again, you may not get the solution that you want, but you do have the ability to use the proper channels to make it happen. Any other counselors? Go ahead, sir.
I know it's been a long night, and I'll make this very brief. Calvin Stoats, Maple Street, I think it's Ward 2, North End. So, to your point, Jay, I appreciate the fact that you give us the opportunity to speak and have a open dialogue. It's needed. So, the Waterville School Board, as a parent in Waterville, I brought my kids, and we had this conversation about masks. And there was other parents there. They were ostracized the vast majority of the time by the board. So I disagree with what you said originally. And this is why we're at this point. We're not being heard, or when we do speak, we're shut down and asked to leave. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
I'm glad that you weren't shut down today.
Well, I appreciate you.
Anybody else?
That's a motion to adjourn.
Have a good night, everyone.